I think in a state of gratitude, when you're really happy with what God has given you, and where you are and who you are, then in that sense of gratitude, I lose fear. I think whenever I'm afraid, it's because I'm going into the future all by myself. And I'm not grateful when I'm doing that. I'm just out there trying to figure out what's going to happen next. And if you start using your imagination, you can sure conjure up a lot of bad things.
You can,
if it gets caught in that frame of mind. But anyways, I always do that. I try and figure out what's the opposite virtue. So, for example, we talked about whether you're what's impatience, what's the opposite virtue, and I was saying understanding, because once you understand, somehow the fear goes away. And I think I use the example: your kids are really raising hanging. You go grab them and you're going to put them in a chair, and you find out they're burning up with fever.
Right.
Anger's gone. It's just now you understand why it is what it is. So if you seek the understanding first, the anger doesn't follow. I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. And that's so very true. One thing that I really impressed me was when you stood up there and you were telling us all these things that you've accomplished. And the way you started your business was on a wing and a prayer, really. You just knew that that's what you had to do, and you were good at it, right?
Well, I went back further than I have dreams. And when I was in the third grade, my teacher asked me to stand up in front of the room and read a first grade book, and I couldn't read it. And it was the first time I was aware that there was something really wrong with me. I couldn't do what everybody does easily. And I remember feeling very inferior, very sick to my stomach. And she wanted to know how I ever got in the third grade without being able to read a first grade book.
And she said that in front of everybody?
Yeah. And I think she was my first grade teacher. And I think she was just frustrated because I slipped through and it just come out that way. I don't have anything against her. I think it was just not just to happen. But the same year we studied the inventors. And Eli Whitney and Edison and Henry Ford, they become my heroes. And I believe they only do one thing, and they were rich and famous. So I couldn't do what everybody else was doing easy, but I set out to become an inventor and make my living off my inventions. Now, I wasn't very good at it. I tore everything apart on the farm, couldn't put it back together. But I didn't give up. I kept doing it. And then by the time I was, 20 or 19 or 20, I got my first patent. It comes in and says, U.S. Patent Office, Terry DUPERON, inventor. And it put me right back in the third grade. And so a lot of this class was built around how does a third grade boy cause that future? How did he do that? How did it happen that I am now an inventor and I make my living off inventions? So I thought there's something there. So as I started working on this class, I started out teaching senior engineers how to be entrepreneurs. And I found out the focus is on the difference in the way they think, because I had people in there very well educated and much smarter than me that couldn't invent, and they couldn't start a business. So I was trying to find out what the difference was, and it's in the way you think. So the class started out evolving around that, trying to figure out that little difference. And then it turned into this. I found out that the same thing that allows you to be an entrepreneur also allows you to be anything else. Anything you want to bring into the future is a certain thought process.
Right.
And we talked about a lot of it in this class.
So where does that thought process come? Do you think that is a born in you thing, or can it be a learned thing?
I think that it's probably more natural to us than we think. If you look at a child before he goes to kindergarten, he lives in an imaginary world. About 98% of his life is imagination. Well, that's all you get. You imagine a book, you're an author. You imagine a business, you're an entrepreneur. A machine, you're an inventor. So it's that ability to imagine that we're all born with is what I'm talking about. That's the focus of the class, is we have that. We're all born with it. I think as we get into the school system, from K to 12, you're heavily rewarded for performing and for memory,
right,
and conforming.
Yes. Oh, that's a performance, memory, and conforming. That squelches us, doesn't
Well,
it?
you got to learn your numbers and your letters and all that stuff, and that's what they're geared to do. But consequently, you don't get a lot of time to develop your creative skills. And I think there's a missing there. And not that the school should change, because they have to teach you all this other
Right.
stuff. And you get so busy doing that, you don't do this. Well, people like me couldn't do it, the letters and numbers and all that thing. I had a lot of trouble with, so I had to depend on the creative side. So it kind of developed and matured in me. But I found out in the class, and I hope you experienced it, that as people start to use it later in life, it matures very quickly, and the more they use it, the better it gets. So that you can create something. You're doing it now. You created this whole program here, so you're already doing it. And I think once you're conscious of that, you just do more of it.
Mm-hmm. And you're right. And you become, if something works, you become less fearful.
Yes.
And when it doesn't work, you just have to try something different.
Yeah. If you can get the woulda, shoulda, couldas out of your life.
Right.
Because we do that to ourselves, and other people do it to us. They say, you should have done it this way, and you sure could have done it this way, and that there's a lot of opinions about that, and then we do it to ourselves. Well, we should have been better at that. We should have went to school. We should have studied this. And in the class, I talk about a football game, and the people in the stands observing life. Those are observation conversations. Woulda, shoulda, couldas. Because I say, well,
you should have done that.
Yeah, you should have thrown the ball that way or that way, and I'd have done it this way. But those are observing life conversations, not living it. Quarterback gets the ball, he makes the best play he can. That's it. There's no woulda, shoulda, couldas for him. So I think you got to decide where you want to live. Do you want to live in the field of life, or do you want to observe it? Okay. And if you want to live in the field, there's no woulda, shoulda, couldas. You can't. I don't even try not. I try not to use those in my daily life, because they're all observation conversations. And
right.
I'd rather not
run fast. Run fast so you don't get tackled.
Yeah, I'd rather live in the wilderness. You get bit in the behind once in a while. But I like it out there better.
That's true, too. So, wow. See what I mean? You amaze me sometimes, I'll tell you. So another thing that you said, and this rang true with everybody in that room. Think about what you loved to do as a child. And I do this in my coaching, which I loved when you said this. And why would you not have a life without those things today? And that was especially true with one of our ladies in there,
Yes.
who was a professor.
Yes.
And never used what she loves so much.
Which is music.
Right. Tell us about that. Tell us about why you say that. Why do you think that makes a difference in the way you live your life?
Well, I was thinking of I run into a composer, and what do you call it? People who lead the band.
Conductor.
And he is
a maestro.
He's famous, and I happened to be at lunch with him, and I was talking to him, and he said that his father wanted him to be an accountant. So he said, I went to school to be an accountant, and every time I go past the music department, I kind of got drawn into that, and pretty soon I was in there, and I started to really love that. And he was good at math. He could be an accountant, but music is math. So he started to migrate that way, and as I was talking to him, I thought, my God, what a waste of life if he become an accountant. Mm-hmm. When the love of his life with this, and he become extraordinary at it. So I think we got to stay away from the woulda, shoulda, couldas.
Right. Well, and look at your life. Maybe your life would have been completely different had that teacher not asked you to read that day.
It would have been. It would have been. A lot of times, the most painful part of your life gets turned around into be the best part of your life. It's like being dyslexic. It turned to be the gift. The very things that haunted me in school served me as an entrepreneur and inventor. I'll give you an example of that. I have to process the question.
So you have to think longer.
Yeah, so they ask a question, somebody was this or whatever, and I'm saying was, that means they're probably dead. I'm analyzing the whole question, and finally I answer it. Well, they're 3 questions down. So the class seemed like it was going really, really fast to me.
Right.
Well, if you're going to invent a solution to a problem, it's very important to understand the question and the problem you're trying to solve. So it worked against me there, worked for me later on.
Isn't that interesting? But you figured that out.
Yeah, I can't write anything, and I read 13 books in my life. It took me a while, so I don't read very well. So you have to depend on life experience to learn. Consequently, you make a lot of mistakes.
But you learned from all your mistakes.
You take it up beat and you get it.
Yeah, you learned the hard way. That's what my dad always used to tell me. You always learn the hard way, but boy, they stick with you.
They do.
Yeah,
they do. And so that's kind of why I ended up here. Where I am now is through those series of mistakes. I made some really bad mistakes. I in the early '90s, I lost everything I had plus $1 million I didn't have. And I really did not know how to get out of that. And that was a change of life experience. It was very miserable. I was being sued by everybody. I got subpoenas every day. I'd be out walking my dog in the dark, and they find me and they give me a subpoena. So, because I couldn't pay people, and they were upset. They should be upset.
Right.
And so anyways, I got very depressed, couldn't get out of bed. And I'm laying in bed, and I'm saying, I start to pray, of course, nothing left to you. And I say, I got nothing. I don't even have another idea. I have no idea what to do next, nothing. And I get this one clear thought, and that was do only what's clear at hand. So it's pretty clear how to get out of bed, pretty clear how to take a shower, pretty clear I should go to the office. 3 years later, I never had a car payment. I just did the next clear step. And I didn't mastermind my way out of that. I just did the next clear step. To this day, I just take that one clear step, and I don't ask for 2. I don't need to know the whole story. And it's taken me a very long ways. So what happened is a very bad experience. It turned out to be the best thing that could ever happen to me. It set me up for a good future. If I hadn't had that experience, I'm so glad nobody spared me, nobody saved me, because I'd have lost the gain. The gain was as bad as the misery of the experience. In fact, it was a lot better. So I think that happens. I think God turns things around that are horrible to become your very best.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I call that giving purpose to your pain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's cool. So if you were to look back at each decade of your life, so we had the book that changed you, the inventors that made you who you are. So you were taking these little steps from early on, but not even knowing. You were just being a child growing up on a farm.
Yeah, with my little dream, I still have to this day.
All right. So what was next? When you look back, what was the next shaping thing before the 90s?
Well, now you're getting personal.
You knew that was going to happen.
So far, easy questions.
Well, I was always pursuing to be an inventor, but then you reach an age where you're drawn to the ladies in your life.
Uh-oh.
I know they always do it to you in the end, right?
Yeah, right. So I met this young lady, and it was one of those teenage things, where you walk in the same room and start breathing funny, and you think that's love. and it's chemistry.
But that is really love at 17. That's how you define love at 17.